Hi there, Wes Moss here, and if you do not like higher taxes or you don't want to think about taxes going higher in the future, you may not even want to watch this video. There are potential tax changes coming depending on the election outcome, and we're heading up to November 3rd, but the Joe Biden tax proposal is something that is relatively complicated. There's so much in it, and I don't think Americans really have an idea of just how significant some of the tax increases could be. I posted this chart that you can see right here where the blue represents Joe Biden's proposed new and highest tax rate in a variety of tax categories relative to the Trump administration's current and highest tax rate in red. I posted that chart and within 24 hours it had about 250,000 views, almost 6,000 shares, over 3,000 reactions, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of comments. What that told me is that Americans here, as we're headed up to the election November 3rd, still don't really understand the proposed tax changes that could be coming if Joe Biden gets his way or gets elected. Now, again, I'm not a political commentator. My job really is to understand the current environment for economics, taxation, and what that means for investment. So that's why I'm so interested in this today. And I think it's so important for you to understand this headed into November 3rd, for your family, friends to understand this, because if we do get these changes, the ramifications are really extraordinary. And it touches, and from what I can tell, most of America. So yes, the taxes that you'll see that I'll go through today are weighted towards particularly the income tax and the new payroll tax, potential new payroll tax, weighted towards higher income earners. But the estimates that you will find about the Biden tax proposals, that just in general, taxes could go up by $3.5 trillion if this proposal were to go through over the course of the next decade. So just $3.5 trillion in higher taxes over the next decade. But I think it's even more important to understand what it means for each category. So let's go right to this chart and understand what this means. By the way, Cardi B did an interview with Joe Biden the other day, and he said, she asked him, hey, Joe, if everything you want to have happen goes through with healthcare and paying for everyone's college and all of these things, can we do it without higher taxes? Because nobody wants higher taxes. Joe Biden's answer to this really came back to saying, look, we can pay for these things as long as everyone pays their, quote, fair share. You know, every time a politician says fair share, it just means higher taxes, particularly for high income earners. And what you'll find here, particularly for small business owners. So let's get to these categories. As you see for this chart, the first category is corporate taxes. I think, again, anybody that's an investor should care about the corporate tax rate, because in the end, markets look at net earnings after taxes. So higher taxes mean lower earnings, which is a headwind for markets. So if you have a 401k or any sort of investment account, you really don't want larger companies paying more in taxes. It's not necessarily a tailwind for those stocks. So I think this impacts half of America that has investments in their 401k or investment accounts when it comes to publicly traded companies. That's a corporate tax rate that could go from today's 21% up to a maximum of 28% under the proposal. The next part of this chart you'll see here, and I think this is really what will grab people's attention. I think this is what people were so kind of stunned to see, is that the income tax is raised under the Biden proposal, but then there's an additional payroll tax. So you can see that 37% today is the highest maximum rate when it comes to federal taxes right now under the Trump administration. That would go up to 39.6. Plus, for those earning over $400,000, there would be a new payroll tax that's 12.4%. So if you're a small business owner and you're paying both sides of that payroll tax, the 6.2 and the 6.2, it's a full 12.4%. You take 12.4 plus almost 40, now you're at over 52%. Keep in mind, this does not count state income taxes. Now, some states are at zero. States like California, you can be north of 10% just in state income tax. So I look at this and I think, wow, a business owner in the state of California could be paying 52% plus in federal taxes and then another 10+%. We're talking about tax rates over 60% in some states. But again, I'm focusing here on the federal proposed tax changes relative to where they currently are today. Look, I'm not a CPA and I don't do taxes specifically for a living, but I'm very interested in understanding taxes because they impact almost everybody and they impact different markets and asset classes and the behavior of us as Americans. So it's critically important to understand. If you're not a small business owner and a high earner and you're still getting a W-2 wage, you would still likely have to pick up at least half of that 12.4% payroll tax, so an additional 6.2% if you're not a business owner. But again, this is very much towards higher income folks, and particularly business owners could really feel the brunt of a much higher income plus new payroll tax under the Biden proposal. The next area of the chart you'll see has to do with small business. Well, 99% of businesses in America are considered small businesses. These are companies that are under 500 employees. Millions of those are single employer, just having one employee, kind of owner and operator. And right now, there's a deduction that most of those small business owners are able to take. From what I can tell, the Biden proposal does away from that deduction. So it takes rates for small business owners, for the majority of small business owners, from 29.6 up to 39.6. Keep in mind that small businesses in America are 50 to 60% of the new jobs created in any given year, nearly 50% of gross domestic product. So it's very difficult to overestimate the importance of small businesses and small business owners. Who does this impact? Well, of course, small business owners themselves, but also those employees. And I think that's important to remember. Any of these taxes can impact a company's ability to either hire employees or retain employees as their tax rates now head higher. To the right of this chart has to do with capital gains and dividend taxes. Again, anybody that has any assets in America, whether it's a house or they own publicly traded companies, has to worry about capital gains and or dividends particularly if you're a retiree and you are getting income or dividends from companies. Right now, a lot of America pays around the 15% tax for long-term capital gains and dividend taxes. However, the maximum rate today is at 20%. Now, there's an additional 3.8% of net investment tax on top of that, depending on your income. But again, remember, we're looking at highest rates here. Today, under the current administration, the highest rates for capital gains and dividends would be 23.8%. That's the 20 plus the 3.8. Where the Biden proposal changes this dramatically has to do with shifting that long-term capital gain rate to ordinary income tax rates, which again, would move into the 39.6 bracket at the highest marginal rate. So now capital gains could be taxed as high as your highest marginal bracket, 39.6, plus the 3.8% net investment tax that's still there, taking taxes on long-term capital gains and dividends up to 43.4%. Now, these are huge proposed changes. We don't know if this would happen or not. Certainly, this needs congressional approval, even if Biden were to win the election, but it's just important to understand what these proposals would really mean. And I think taxes will increasingly become a huge part of the conversation when it comes to the election. Of course, COVID-19 will be priority or topic number one in 2020 coming up to the election, and there's a variety of issues. But in the end, elections very often come back to the economy, and this is a part of the economy, really people's personal economy, how much they pay in federal income taxes, that is a huge piece of the equation, and it's important for people to understand. And these are such dramatic changes that I don't think America's really wrapped their arms around this just yet. So that's why I did this video. I want to make sure people understand what these proposed changes could possibly mean if they were to go through. And I think very simply, the chart itself, that picture is worth 1,000 words. So if you do nothing else, that sharing the chart that's in this video and sharing a link to the article that's in the description right beneath this video is super important to do. Again, another indication that we'll see the importance of the tax conversation continue to be elevated as we get into the election. We've already seen the Trump administration do an executive order to cut payroll taxes for part of 2020. And we've even seen Trump talk about the potential changes to a calculation for capital gains taxes already in 2020. Now, we'll see where this goes, but changing the way capital gain tax is calculated or indexing capital gains to inflation is a way to reduce overall capital gain taxes without necessarily changing the capital gain rate itself. It's really changing the calculus of how much you have to pay on the basis relative to the gain. That's something that's getting a lot of traction. Again, another indication that taxes will continue to rise in importance headed into November 3rd. Again, we all know that elections come down to a few things. One of those has to do with the economy. I can't think of a more important piece of the economy than taxes themselves, because they themselves, taxes, have an impact on business formation, jobs, which are obviously critically important to the economy, and then to investors, particularly retirees when it comes to the potential change for capital gains and dividend taxes. If you have questions about this is something the Money Matters team has been studying now already for some time. We wanted to make sure we did a video and get this information out there. If you have questions, you can find us at wesmoss.com, email us, and we'll get back to you. Maybe there are some things that you should think about headed into 2020 when it comes to this election, the potential for tax changes, and what it means for you and your portfolio and retirement. Again, if nothing else, I think the chart itself, the picture is worth 1,000 words. I think it tells the story of what potentially could happen if the Joe Biden tax proposal goes through as it's currently proposed. And it's just dramatic changes that we all need to understand.